Welcome back to the 10-second runoff powered by Culture Media with your host, Joe Mitchell. Alec Escade's not here today. He's working his second job. And producer Magic Mikey Shiaza. There he is.
How we doing?
Looking fine as ever, too, huh?
Finally back on camera, huh?
Yes, indeed.
I was back, then I was gone, now I'm back again. This is probably one of my last episodes with a good camera, though.
Stop, bro. We'll keep you for a little while.
It happens.
Week 5 preview. We didn't get our power ratings in on the other episode earlier in the week, so I'm going to go ahead and run through those here in a second. A couple top 25 games this week, and then obviously our locks as normal. You know the drill at this point. I'm going to run through my top 10 real quick. So here we go with my power ratings. I have Georgia at number 1. That remained the same. I know a couple people had some movement with Ohio State, even Penn State jumping up there. I left Georgia at 1. At 2, I had Ohio State. So Ohio State was much further down the list. I want to say they were 7 or 8 for me last week. They showed me a lot in that Notre Dame game. I think what they did defensively, holding Notre Dame to just 14 points, is really what I needed to see to jump them up that high. I feel great about them after that game. Number 3, Oregon. Oregon's done nothing but dominate all year outside of maybe that Texas Tech game. But then, again, they were in a battle and they found a way to win. And then they've been dominant in every showing since. And what they did to Colorado last week was, damn near illegal.
A beatdown.
Yeah, they bodied them from start to finish. They were bigger on both fronts, on the offensive line and defensive line, and they just imposed their will the entire game. And honestly, they beat them on the football field, and then they beat them in the media room as well. Did you see the video they put out?
I did not. What happened?
Oh my God, bro! Not even as a producer on a football show, but as a football fan, how did you miss that?
I don't know. I've kind of been off social media a little bit this week, so I didn't get to see it. But what happened in this video? Maybe I did, and I'm just forgetting. But
yeah, you couldn't forget if you saw it. But so essentially, Dan Lanning, the head coach at Oregon, was getting a lot of backlash, I guess, for how he was speaking to his team in the locker room pregame, what he was saying, subliminally taking shots at Deion, saying how they play for clicks, we play with our pads, that kind of stuff, blah, 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 whatever. So what Oregon did is they put out a video in response to all this hate, and it was like damn near a short film, and it featured Shiloh Sanders saying he was going to fight everybody on Oregon's team as well as their coach, stomping on the O, which, happens, but whatever. One of the defensive linemen saying, "I'd like to report a murder for these Ducks." Like, just a lot of crazy stuff. Like, they were talking before the game. And then Dan Lanning, it sounds like his pregame speech was more so in response to that as opposed to the offensive on Deion Sanders. But regardless, they beat them down in every aspect of the game. Just a dominant team win. I feel really, really good about Oregon right now. I said it on last week's episode or earlier this week's episode in the recap. My pick to win the Pac-12 was Washington. I'm going to maintain that it is Washington still, but right now, if they played today, I'd have to take Oregon.
On a neutral field and everything?
Yeah. But I do think Washington's going to get there and win it. I do think Washington's going to win the Pac-12. Right now, I have Oregon at 3.
So you think right now Oregon is a bit more complete at the moment, but you think as the season goes on, Washington will catch up and maybe surpass them?
100%. I think Oregon's a better team. But I think there's ways that Washington can win that game, and they likely would only have to play them once. Maybe twice. But yeah, the point is I think that's a winnable game for Washington, but I do think that Oregon's the better team. That's why I have them rated higher. Number 4, I have Penn State. So I actually have Penn State jumping Michigan here, which I didn't last week. Penn State, I have nothing to complain about with Penn State so far. They've won all their games dominantly. And I love what I've seen out of Drew Aller. I love what I've seen out of their defense. Now, look, I have Michigan at 5. I think they're what and what right now. Ohio State took a leap. They jumped up to 2 for me, but I think these two teams are – I feel like last year it was Ohio State, Michigan in Tier 1, Penn State right below them but in a separate tier, and then kind of the rest of the field was below them. I feel like right now they're all pretty damn close. Penn State, to me, has looked solid, as has Michigan. Ohio State just earned that bump with their win over Notre Dame. And then at 6, I have Washington. So, again, whenever you're talking about top 10 teams, I think you're talking about fractions of a point differential. I think they're all really, really good teams. But just to recap, Georgia, Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State, Michigan, Washington at 6, Texas at 7. I just need to see more consistency out of Texas. I think they're a great team. Obviously, I have them in my top 10, rated 7. So I think they're a really good team. I just need to see more consistency. We can't have the tied up with Wyoming going into the last quarter of the game 2 weeks ago. Can't have that. If they can just be more consistent, and honestly, if I can see more consistency out of Quinn Ewers, I think they'd be probably a little bit higher on this list. Number 8, Florida State. Really key win for them against Clemson this week. It went to overtime. I think a lot of people expected Florida State to win this one by a much larger margin than they did. But I think this was a really impressive win. Clemson is not – they're no slouch of a football team. I know everybody was kind of down on Clemson because of how they lost to Duke. But I think that was a really, really impressive win for Florida State to be gritty and go find a way to win. They gave up honestly, Florida State was down, found a touchdown defensively late in the game, forced overtime, and then found a way to win. So I feel good about them. USC at number 9. Honestly, man, I have them here because of their offense. Plain and simple. I think Caleb Williams is one of, if not the best quarterback in the country, and probably the best. I know right now Michael Penix Jr. passed him in terms of odds for the Heisman race, but I think Caleb Williams is probably the best quarterback in the country. But defensively, they just have no rush defense. They just have no rush defense, and that's going to cost them down the stretch. I think right now, if they were to play any of the 8 I have ahead of them, I think they'd be dogs. But probably favored over almost everyone else. At 10, I have Notre Dame. Here's the thing for me with Notre Dame. I was so high on them the last several weeks, and I still am. I'm very high on Notre Dame. I think they're a top 10 team in the country, one of the best teams in the country, with still very, very real shot at the playoff. My issue with Notre Dame is how they couldn't capitalize on Ohio State's mistakes. And then, honestly, I think they played a more complete game than Ohio State did, but they lost it because they couldn't capitalize on the mistakes Ohio State made and then left 10 people on the field for the last 2 plays of the game.
That's just bad.
You can't. I mean, that's a horrible coaching mistake in a situational scenario like that. And props to Ohio State for taking advantage of it and running right towards the hole, but yeah, you can't have that. But regardless, I think Notre Dame's a top 10 team in the country. I think they proved that this weekend, even in a loss. And I feel really good about all these teams on my list. Honestly, the one that I feel the least good about is probably USC, even though they have one of the best offenses in the country, probably the best quarterback in the country, but just defensively, they scare me a lot. The rush defense, I'm not sold.
Well, I do have a question for you.
What you got?
So I feel like every week we go through these power ratings and we talk about every team, but we never talk about Georgia.
Yeah.
Georgia's always at number 1, and we never talk about them. How are you feeling about the Georgia Bulldogs right now? Yeah.
I honestly, I don't feel like Georgia's given me any reason to worry about them. They're down some of their best players right now. Ladd McConkey hasn't played yet. They have an injured running back room. And they're finding ways to win all of their games, most of them in dominant fashion. The South Carolina game was a little bit different. But again, second half, dominant. They make all the adjustments they need to. They go out there and they handle business in the second half. And I think when those offensive players, those key players offensively come back and are healthy, they won't be an underdog to anybody in the country. I don't think they're an underdog to anybody in the country right now, but I think the how the games have played out early, and it looks like Georgia struggled early in games, I think that is kind of what happens when some of your key impact players offensively aren't available to you. And the fact that you can go out there and be gritty and find a way to win and make the adjustments necessary, and then be effective in, be effective and efficient in making those adjustments and seeing them out. How can you put them behind any of these teams?
Very, very fair point. I just wanted to see what your thoughts were on that.
Would you have them lower than 1? I think there's a fair argument for maybe Ohio State or Oregon. Other than that, I don't really. I mean, who else would you put?
No, I would agree. I think Georgia is still at 1. I just want to see what your thoughts are. And because, like I said, we talk about all these other teams all the time. We always go in depth. I feel like we never really go in depth on Georgia, which is reasonably so. Like you said, they win all their games in a really good fashion. So there's no reason to really go in on it. Like, it's not like they have any problems. But I just wanted to see what your thoughts were on that.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, I'm going to run off Alex's picks here. His top 10 power ratings. He has Georgia at 1. He has Michigan at 2. Texas at 3. Florida State at 4. Penn State at 5. Oregon at 6. Ohio State at 7. Washington at 8. Notre Dame at 9. LSU at 10. So 2 very different lists.
Yeah.
I mean,
I'm not going to lie. Alec, I know you're not here right now, but if you see this, one, you were so high on Oregon, and you have them at 6, which is, I mean, I get that, like the top 5 teams above those. Like you were saying, like those are fraction differences. But having Ohio State at 7 is a little wild to me, especially after they just beat Notre Dame in that game. Yeah, like you were saying, it wasn't the best game from Notre Dame, but still, that's a really good win against a really good team. And having them at 7 is just a little, I don't know, that's just a little off to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know he's not here to defend himself right now, and I know you probably agree with me. So
yeah, I do agree with you. And he's also not only, I don't want to just hate on him when he's not here. I want him to be able to defend himself. But if he was here, he knows I'd say this to him. And I'm interested to hear his response next week. But I understand he's high on Michigan. I don't blame him for that. I don't understand why he could have Michigan at 2 and Penn State at 3. I don't think Penn State would be underdogs to Texas or Florida State. But all that being said, he's been high on Oregon since July, and he's got Oregon sitting at 6. He's got Washington down there at 8. I know I've been much higher on Washington than he has, so I can't really blame him there. LSU at 10 is a little interesting to me. Whenever he left off USC. So yeah, who knows? I think we have 9 of our 10 are the same teams, but the placement for them is very, very different. And again, it's all fractions of points. I think it just comes down to what we prioritize. So, whatever. I disagree with his rating, but I'm sure he disagrees with mine. So, all right, let's get into the preview for this week, week 5. We get number 1 Georgia goes to Auburn. Georgia's a 14.5-point favorite. Off rip, how do you feel about that line?
I mean, I think that's kind of low, but I guess because they're going to Auburn. Auburn has a very passionate fan base. Can't imagine that's an easy stadium to play in, but I feel like they will cover. And I think, like, if I were to set the line, I would say 21.5 would be good, somewhere in that range. I think 14 is a little low, but I'm not mad at it. Like, I don't entirely disagree. I just think that they will win by more.
All right, I don't necessarily disagree with you. Auburn put up 59 in week 1. They struggled in week 2 versus Cal, winning 14-10. They put up 45 points over Samford in week 3, and then lost by 17 to A&M last week. So they've kind of been all over the place. They've been really inconsistent, but they've shown those really high highs and then those low lows. But being that this game is being played at Jordan-Hare Stadium in Auburn, it's going to be a packed house. The pom-poms are going to be crazy. It's going to be loud. Obviously, they're getting up for the number 1 team in the country. I think at least for that first half, you see the high highs that Auburn's
It'll be close, especially in the first half. It'll definitely be close.
I'm looking for and with all of the injuries on Georgia's offense, I think you're going to see a really aggressive Auburn offense trying to set the pace and make Georgia keep pace with Auburn. I'm looking to see Peyton Thorne be really, really efficient for that Auburn offense. I do think Georgia ends up winning, but I actually like Auburn to cover the 14.5.
Really?
I do. I think it's going to be a close game. I think this one's going to come down to the fourth quarter, not because I think Auburn is a top 5 or top 10 team in the country, but I think, look, they already have one SEC loss. They lost to Texas A&M last week by 17 points at that. They can't afford a second SEC loss considering what's going on with LSU and Alabama and even Ole Miss. LSU and Ole Miss play this weekend. We'll get to that game in a second. But if LSU can find a way to win, then you're sitting at Alabama, LSU, Ole Miss, and Alabama's got Mississippi State. They're going to have to find a way to win as well. But again, assuming Alabama and LSU both win, you're sitting at Alabama, LSU, Ole Miss, all with, That's a bad point because Ole Miss lost to Alabama last week. Regardless, so Ole Miss would have 2 SEC losses. At this point, Auburn would have 2 SEC losses, and Alabama and LSU would be sitting alone at 1 SEC loss, and they would have to play each other later down the field or later in the schedule, early November, looking to break that tie. Now, in the meantime, Alabama would have to play Tennessee. So if you're Auburn, you really, really don't want to go get your second SEC loss here. I think they do.
I do agree that they will play up to Georgia's level. They'll give it everything that they can. I do agree with you on that.
I was all over the place on that point because I was really in the back of my head. I was thinking Alabama, LSU, and Ole Miss would all be sitting tied at 1 SEC loss, but Ole Miss lost last week.
We get what you were saying. Like, you made a valid point, but you did kind of go off, but it does make sense. Like, you can't afford to have another SEC loss this early.
I was thinking backwards. Because LSU's loss is not in the SEC.
Right.
So if Ole Miss beats LSU, you'd be sitting tied at Alabama, LSU, Ole Miss, all having 1 SEC loss, with A&M, and Auburn and Mississippi State at that point all sitting with 2 SEC losses.
Yeah.
So you really don't want to be in that second tier. It's really, really hard to win the SEC with 2 losses.
For sure.
2 losses in conference. So that's what it was. I was just backwards.
Yeah.
So if Ole Miss finds a way to win, you're going to have a 3-way tie at 1 with 1 loss. Obviously, Alabama would have the lead there until that LSU game, and we see what happens. But regardless, I do think Georgia wins, but I think Auburn covers that 14.5. Okay, number 2, Michigan at Nebraska. Michigan's a 17.5-point favorite. Look, Nebraska is bad at football, and Michigan's really good at it. I like Michigan to cover the 17.5. I probably wouldn't put money on it. Vegas is too good at what they do. You showed me that bet slip. You showed me that bet slip where somebody won their parlay.
Yeah.
But it was a half a yard difference on all 3 legs.
All 3 legs of the parlay.
I mean, that is unbelievable.
Meanwhile, my parlays for Thursday Night Football, I'm sure they're all busted already. We're probably in the second quarter. There's no way I'm winning any money tonight.
Yeah.
I can just guarantee that.
And we like to bet on Major League Baseball as well. And right now, coming up before the playoffs, you have pitchers getting pulled in the 3rd. I mean, what's going on?
Yeah,
regardless, this is a football show. But yeah, no, Vegas is too good at what they do. I do like Michigan to cover the 17.5, but I'm not going to put money on that. 3 Texas versus 24 Kansas. Look, Kansas is looking to come out 5-0 they did it last year. They're looking to do it again this year, which would be huge for their program just to be able to turn that around back-to-back seasons after really struggling in previous seasons. I don't think they can do it. Texas is a 16.5-point favorite, and I think this is a blowout. With Texas, and I know I said it whenever I was going through the power ratings, but Texas has been inconsistent. They get inconsistent quarterback play. Quinn Ewers just tends to play up to the level of his competition. He played an outstanding game versus Alabama, and then he came out against Wyoming and really struggled through 3 quarters. Now they got it done. They ended up winning by 21 points, and it felt like if you just looked at the score of that game, you were like, oh, Texas beat the crap out of Wyoming. But they didn't. It was tied going into the 4th quarter.
Right.
So if you didn't watch that game, it was a sweat.
Yeah. And I do think, like you were saying before, I think Quinn Ewers needs a statement game, and I think this is the game to do it. If he were to have a statement game at this point of the season, playing Kansas at home, I think that this is the game where Quinn Ewers will pop off again.
And look, he's kind of already done that. Like against Alabama, he had a great game and got a top 10 win. So I'm not throwing shade. I think.
Oh no, I'm not throwing shade either. I'm just saying I think at this point in Texas's season, if like you were saying, they need a game to come out. I'm not putting words in your mouth. I think they need a game to come out and just dominate from start to finish, and that's where they're going to start their momentum for the rest of the season. And I think this is the perfect game for them to do so.
Yeah. Now look, Kansas relies heavily on their run game. They've rushed the ball 159 times already this year in 4 games, and they've only passed it 78 times. So, they've only completed 78 passes. They've thrown 103 passes, but I mean, look, when you're talking about completions versus rushing attempts, they've damn near doubled the amount of rushing attempts than they have completed passes. So, you see what I'm getting at? No, not damn near doubled. They've more than doubled it. They're going to rely heavy on that run game again this week, and Texas allows less than 3 yards per carry in their rushing defense.
Yeah.
I think this is a bad matchup for Kansas, and I think Texas goes out and wins by 3 possessions or more. So we do these shows live, right? I got to address it.
Yeah, we do have to address it. That was kind of funny.
We do these shows live in shop. There's a big window right here. You can see we're in a shopping center. Every now and again, we get people walking by, and we just got some people walking by. That was crazy.
That was cool. We were getting some thumbs up. We had some live fans. It was kind of cool.
All right, number 4, Ohio State, and number 5, Florida State are both on bye this week. Also, I know these teams are on bye this week, but if your team is playing and you don't have tickets yet, go get tickets. You can go to SeatGeek, code 10-second runoff. You'll get $20 off your first purchase. If you've never bought any tickets on SeatGeek, go use our code. You can get your tickets for $20 cheaper than normal. All right, number 6, Penn State at Northwestern. Penn State is a 27.5-point favorite. Look, I think I had Penn State at number 4. They'd be in my playoff right now if I were to rate the teams. Northwestern, again, I think this is a very, very fair line. And I think we can leave it at that. I think it's going to be a 4-possession win. Whether that's 24 points or, I guess 24 is technically 3 possessions because you can score 3 touchdowns and go for 2 every time and score 24.
No one does that.
Whether it's a 25-point win or more, I don't know, but I do think Penn State wins by 3 possessions or more. Number 7, Washington at Arizona. Washington's a 17.5-point favorite. This one's interesting to me because I love Washington's offense. I think, again, Michael Penix Jr. is leading the Heisman race right now, and with good reason. He's a baller. Arizona's struggled, but they've also taken Mississippi State to overtime. You know what I mean? They've shown flashes to be able to stay in games if they're allowed to. I don't think Washington's going to allow them to, but I think after the first quarter, you could be like, what's going on with Washington? I do think Washington wins by 17 or more, so I would take them to cover here. I'm not going to lock that, but I would take them to cover. But this is a sneaky one. We'll see what happens. Look, again, I think Washington wins big, but if Arizona I'm saying it's sneaky because there's a chance Arizona could cover. I don't think there's any chance Arizona wins.
Right.
USC at Colorado. Colorado is going to go 0-2 of these from last week to this week. It's a 21.5-point line, and I think USC wins by more than that. I think, again, Colorado is just not built. They have great talent on their team in the quarterback position, in the running back room, at wide receiver, in the secondary. They have really good skill talent. But they don't have the trenches on either side of the ball. Which is, like I said, the only weak point USC really has is their rush defense, and I don't think Colorado is going to be able to take advantage of that like some other teams may. I think USC is probably going to be able to force the turnover a couple times, and they're going to go out there and hang 50 on Colorado, and that'll be that.
Do we have any update? Is Travis Hunter back?
Travis Hunter's not back, bro.
I know he said he's not going to take no for an answer, but after what Deion said, he basically said you're taking no for an answer.
Yeah,
you're waiting to get healthy.
He's not playing. He's not playing. He's liking things on Twitter that he probably shouldn't be liking. So I probably shouldn't have said that. But you're welcome to do.
We'll give him some good PR. He did meet up with Henry Blackburn earlier this week, and they went bowling and they donated some money to charity. For those who don't know, that was the guy who had the late hit on him, the one who injured him, and is the reason that he's sidelined right now. So I think that's a classy move by him. So I will say that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I know he would love to be playing in these games. The last 2 weeks are probably 2 of the more meaningful games that Colorado is going to play. Really, it was going to give them an opportunity to show how good they can be. And honestly, I think we saw how good they can be against TCU, and that was probably the ceiling of what this team's capable of.
We've also seen how bad they can be when they lost by, I forget how much, but they got smoked by Oregon.
Yeah, and I don't even know if that's necessarily how bad they can be, but it's just a limit on their team. I think they're overperforming. Like, you can't, bro. Their line was set at 4 wins. Like,
yeah,
they started 3-0. Like, you can't go back and just recalibrate what you were expecting out of them because they started 3-0. Like, their line was set at 4 wins for a reason. I think they cover that. Like, I think they'll find 5 wins. I think they'll find 2 more wins this year, but to see them lose to Oregon the way that they did, they were supposed to lose to Oregon that way. Like, we saw it a lot in the comments on Instagram and some of the YouTube comments, but the people that were taking Colorado over Oregon last week were just blinded by the Deion hype train. There was no chance Colorado was going to beat Oregon last week, and I'm telling you now, there's no chance Colorado is going to beat USC this week. The fact that it's a 21.5-point line only is crazy to me. Like, USC is very well going to go put up 50 points on this Colorado team, and I know USC doesn't have a great defense, but their secondary is fine. They don't. Their issues aren't in the secondary; it's in the rushing attack, or in the rushing defense rather. So, and if Colorado is going to keep up with USC, they're going to have to do more than run the ball.
That is true.
So we'll see. I like USC by 24 or more. Number 9, Oregon at Stanford. Oregon's a 27.5-point favorite. Here's a point for you. I think Colorado would go beat Stanford right now.
Well, I mean, I would agree with that.
So you would agree that Colorado would go beat Stanford? So I'm going to take Oregon to beat Stanford by a lot more than 27.5. I think Oregon has proven that they're one of the best teams in the country right now, offensively and defensively. Bo Nix is playing great. Their wide receiver room is playing great. Running back room with Bucky Irving, the plethora of running backs that they have over there playing great. I mean, defensively, great. Dan Lanning as a head coach, great. I can go up and down the list. I don't see many holes on this Oregon team. With the amount of lines that we've seen so far in the mid-30s, low 40s, I would have expected this one to be close to that.
Agreed.
Now, granted, it is a conference game, so I understand it, being a little bit tighter. It is at Stanford, so they gave them 3 points there, so I guess they would have had them at 30.5 on a neutral field. But I like Oregon to win big, by a lot.
Yeah.
All right, 10 Utah at 19 Oregon State. This one is interesting, right? So Utah's ranked 10th in the country. Oregon State's ranked 19th. Oregon State's a 3.5-point favorite. I don't expect Cam Rising to play again this week. Utah's 10th in the nation in total defense and 6th in scoring defense, and they're going to need every bit of that defense. They're going to need every bit of that defense to play the best football they've played all year if they're going to go beat Oregon State. The Beavers at Oregon State, their back is against the wall. They absolutely cannot afford to go 0-2 in conference play here. I think you're going to see, especially a home game, a night game, it's going to be loud. It's going to be rocking. I think you're going to see a great game out of DJ Uiagalelei. I think that offense is – and look, Utah's defense is they're no slouch either, okay? They're a top 10 defense in the country. I've already said that. But I think Oregon State is going to have to play as if they can't lose. Because they can't, frankly. They can't. With Washington and Oregon and USC in this conference, there's no 9-3 three-way tie or four-way tie again this year. If you have 2 losses in conference, maybe you're still in the mix, but I see that as very unlikely. Oregon State, I think, wins this game. I think they win this game in an extremely, extremely close game. I'm stuck here, though, man. I don't think Cam Rising – I don't think Utah without Cam Rising can pull this one out. What do you think?
I mean, I agree. I think that Oregon – I think just not having Cam Rising obviously is killer, and I don't think Utah will be able to keep up with Oregon State. I do think it'll be close, like you said, but I don't think that without your starting quarterback playing at Oregon State, I don't think you're going to be able to keep up.
Yeah. I mean, I'm with you. 11 Notre Dame at 17 Duke. Notre Dame's a 5.5-point favorite. This is a pretty tight line, especially just hearing Notre Dame versus Duke. Forget this season. If you hear that phrase, right, Notre Dame versus Duke, you'd expect Notre Dame to be a much bigger favorite than they are. The reality is you have 2 top 15 scoring defenses in the country. And for Duke, man, I'm choking up. For Duke, this is an opportunity to prove that they're legitimate, right? They went out and beat Clemson the way they did. They've won every game they've played by 3 possessions or more, including that game over Clemson where they won 28-7. So I think this is a huge opportunity for them to go and put a stamp and say, we are here. We're a real team. That wasn't a fluke. And I think they're going to be fired up and ready to do that at home. But I expect Notre Dame to get back in the win column. I think this is probably a 1-possession game. And I do think Notre Dame is better than one possession, or is a better than one possession team than Duke. The reason I say that is because I think there's a chance that they could have been, a little bit banged up versus that Ohio State team. And I don't mean everybody's injured. That's not what I'm saying. But I think whenever you go out and play a game as physical as that Ohio State game was, it's tough to come right back and play elite level football the following week. If Duke goes out there and leans on them and tries to run it, and what did that say?
Would you put this game on upset alert?
I
mean, I know you're going to take them to win, but should we put them on a watch? Should we put them on watch here?
Yeah, we could put them on watch. I like Notre Dame to win. But again, I think it's a one-possession game, and I think if Duke goes out there and leans on them and tries to run the ball and controls time of possession, it could put Notre Dame in a little bit of a bind. Now, what Notre Dame showed me defensively last week, I feel really, really good about them, and I don't know that Duke's offense is good enough to go score 17 to 20 points on this team. Now, granted, they've done it. The lowest they've scored all year was 28 points, and they've scored in the mid-30s and the 40s, and they've played great football so far. But I don't know that I'm sold on them as a team. I don't know that I could see this Duke team being in the ACC championship at the end of the year. Reason being is because I look at that Clemson game, right? And I've said this already. But I look at that Clemson game, and when I go back and watch it, I see Clemson shooting themselves in the foot over and over and over. And then now credit to Duke for taking advantage of it when they did. But I don't see Duke taking that game from Clemson. I see Clemson losing it. Literally 2 or 3 plays go differently. We're looking at an entirely different game in week 1. So we'll put them on upset alert, but I like Notre Dame to win in a one-possession game, and only because they're immediately playing this after Ohio State. If they got this game after a couple – if they got Duke after a couple of cupcakes like Duke is getting Notre Dame, then I would like them to win by 2 or 3 possessions. And that might be a little bit wide of a line, a little bit wide of a spread, but we'll see. I do like Notre Dame to win. Number 12, Alabama at Mississippi State. Bama's a 14.5-point favorite. This is a Mississippi State team that we saw get absolutely demolished by LSU just 2 weeks ago. And then, frankly, that LSU team struggled with Arkansas last week. So I think this is a Mississippi State team that's down. They're going through a coaching change, horrendous situation over there. But we're in week 5. We've got to look at this team as it is in its current form. And although Alabama hasn't looked like the Alabama we're used to seeing, they're still extremely talented. They're still big on both fronts, offensively and defensively. And I think Alabama wins here. And they probably cover. Having Jalen Milroe back in the mix here, Alabama just beat Ole Miss 24-10, and they won it looking bad. And Ole Miss didn't look great in that game either. It was 2 teams that looked like they were struggling, and Alabama still found a way to put up 24 points. I don't think Mississippi State's defense is good enough to hold them the way Ole Miss's defense was early in that game. And I think LSU laid out the blueprint for Mississippi State. If you can get home and, make that offensive line, make adjustments at the line pre-snap, a lot of defensive movement, a lot of different blitz packages, Mississippi State's going to struggle. We saw Will Rogers really, really struggle against LSU in week 3, I believe it was. Yeah, in week 3. So I think Alabama just needs to go back and kind of take up that same model LSU had, and it's going to be a long day for Mississippi State. Unfortunately for them, I think that's going to be their 3rd straight loss. Obviously, I keep referencing that LSU loss. They had a 3-point loss to South Carolina last week where they did look a little bit better, but I think Alabama finds a way to get it done handily.
They're going to take care of business this week.
Yeah. 13 LSU at number 20 Ole Miss. LSU's a 2.5-point favorite. We can throw them on upset alert here.
Agreed. I agree.
I 100% expect this one to be a dogfight all the way through. This is one of those games where I do believe LSU is the better team, but they've had so much inconsistency in the first 4 weeks of the season. And when I say inconsistency, I don't mean that they're not playing well. I just mean they're playing inconsistently. Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas playing elite football right now at the wide receiver positions. Jaden Daniels is literally on pace to break records at LSU that Joe Burrow set in 2019. So you look at the stat sheet here, and you're like, LSU should be they should be a bigger favorite than just a 2.5 point spread. But their secondary has been rough, man. They've kind of found out who their linebackers are. It looks like they're going to go Greg Penn, Whit Weeks. Obviously, Harold Perkins plays in there. So it's going to be – I think they're going to do everything they can to get home to Jackson Dart. But Ole Miss is playing well in the pass game. They have a top 15 passing attack in the country. That speaks trouble for the LSU secondary. Not to mention, if LSU has to sit back and commit to limiting the Ole Miss secondary, Quinshon Judkins is the running back over at Ole Miss. And he hasn't really had an opportunity to get loose this year. But against a team with a struggling secondary like LSU, that's something to keep an eye on. That secondary is the clear weak point on LSU's team, which is so weird because looking at LSU historically, that's DBU. That's normally the strength of their team, and right now it's the weakest point. So I think this is an opportunity for Quinshon Judkins to get loose, considering LSU's going to have to they're not going to be able to just put guys on islands. They're going to have to play deep zones and try to limit that passing attack of Ole Miss while simultaneously containing Quinshon Judkins. So we'll see how this goes. I do like LSU to win. I think when LSU is playing their best football, they win this game by 2 possessions or more. But judging by the last several weeks of ups and downs, I don't know when we're going to see LSU play their best football. Are we going to get the LSU team that played that went and beat Mississippi State the way they did, or are we going to get the LSU team that struggled versus Arkansas last week? I don't know the answer to that question. If it's the former, they win big. If it's the latter, they very well could lose on the road. So let's put them on upset alert. I'm going to take LSU to win. I'm going to just take LSU money line. I'm not going to touch the spread. I think this is one that comes right down to the end of the game, and it could be an opportunity for Jaden Daniels to go get hey, this is a tough win, and we got it done, similar to what we saw last weekend with Arkansas. We'll see. We'll see what happens. Like I said, if Ole Miss does find a way to win this game, you'd be looking at a 1-loss Alabama in the SEC, a 1-loss Ole Miss in the SEC, and a 1-loss LSU in the SEC. Now, granted, LSU does have that, and frankly, for that matter, Alabama has a loss to Texas, and LSU has a loss to Florida State. So we'll see how that plays out. 14 Oklahoma versus Iowa State. Oklahoma's a 19.5-point favorite here. I think Oklahoma is a team that is right on the edge of being in my top 10 power ratings. Their offense has been really, really good. Iowa State lost to Ohio a couple weeks ago. It's not going to go well for them. Dylan Gabriel might throw for 900 yards this game. I mean, it's not going to be close. The fact that it's a 19.5, I think that could even be a little bit wider. I'd like to see that spread in the mid-20s. I think Oklahoma wins big. North Carolina and Washington State are both on byes, as is Miami. So we go to number 21 Tennessee versus South Carolina. Tennessee's a 12.5-point favorite. We saw South Carolina leading Georgia 14-3 at the half, and then we also saw them just beat Mississippi State by 3 points last week. So this is another team that's been inconsistent. When Spencer Rattler is playing his best ball, South Carolina is a really good team. We saw him do that last year versus Tennessee when Hendon Hooker went down. Joe Milton came in, and South Carolina just never gave up the lead. So I'm interested to see how this one goes. I do like Tennessee to win this game, but I would not be surprised to see South Carolina cover here. We saw Tennessee struggle against Florida. Defensively, they just struggled. There's no other way to say that. Defensively, Tennessee struggled against Florida, and I think South Carolina can follow that same blueprint. I don't think South Carolina wins this game, though. What do you think?
I agree. I think Tennessee is going to win this one. I do think it's going to be close, and this is actually going to bring me – I was going to wait till the end of the show to say this, but I saw a post the other day, and it said – it was a hot take. I forget where I saw it, but it said within the next few weeks, we're going to see Spencer Rattler overtake Caleb Williams as the best quarterback in college football.
Yeah, I don't believe we'll see that happen. Do you?
I don't. But
You're just referencing it?
yeah, I'm just bringing it up to see what your thoughts are on that. I do think that Spencer Rattler is good when he plays his best. I think he's a great quarterback. But, I mean, I don't think anybody's touching Caleb Williams right now, except maybe Michael Penix Jr. But I do think Caleb Williams is in a league of his own. I mean, he's the top prospect for a reason. He's the best quarterback for a reason. He's gone out and proved it.
Yeah, I think them too. So Caleb Williams, Michael Penix Jr., maybe even Bo Nix. I think the Pac-12 has some really good quarterbacks over there right now. Spencer Rattler's a great quarterback in his own right, but yeah, I mean, what are we talking about? He's not Caleb Williams.
Agreed.
And also, we can just go back to that Oklahoma quarterback room a couple years ago. They both quarterbacks transferred out of Oklahoma, and Spencer Rattler was, the guy there. He was the guy there, and Caleb Williams took his spot halfway through the season. So I think that's something that you saw early in both of their careers, and I don't think that's something that's necessarily going to change. I don't think that's a slight to Spencer Rattler. I think Caleb Williams he's the Heisman for a reason. He's a really, really, really damn good quarterback. So, yeah, I think that's a bad take, and again, it's not a slight at Spencer Rattler. All right, 22 Florida at Kentucky. Kentucky, unranked, is a 1.5-point favorite here. I'm not mad at that. I don't think that's crazy. But looking at the matchup here, look, Kentucky running back Ray Davis. He's a monster on the ground. He's averaging like 6 or more yards a carry. But Florida has a top 15 rushing defense of their own. So I think that's going to be a really interesting matchup. That's a point of emphasis for this game. I think the difference here is Graham Mertz has been so efficient this year. He stays ahead of schedule. He's just been solid. Look, Kentucky have the 9th ranked rushing defense in their own right, so I want to give them their credit for that. But I think when you go rushing defense for rushing defense, running backs for running backs, and quarterbacks for quarterbacks, I'm going to go Florida because I think my opinion is that Florida has gotten so much more out of Graham Mertz than they expected this year. And so, yes, Kentucky's got the 9th ranked rushing defense in the country, but Florida still has they still have Trevor Etienne and Montrell Johnson in the running back room. So I think that when I look at this game, I think Florida can give them all their worth in the running game, in that rushing defense. But I don't think that's going to be their go-to. I think their go-to is going to be, all right, let's put the ball in the hands of Graham Mertz. Let's move the ball methodically, control the time of possession. And if Kentucky chooses to sit back on that, all right, well, now let's lean on our rushing attack. And because they have both and they've been great in both, I think that's enough to be the difference in Kentucky in their run game with Ray Davis. So look, I think this is going to be a really, really good game. But if I had to take a winner, I'm going to take Florida. And it looks like if this game was at Florida, Florida would be a 1.5-point favorite. I mean, this is a toss-up. It's literally no, that's wrong. On a neutral field, Florida would be a 1.5-point favorite. So
2. 2, no.
Well, Kentucky's a 1.5-point favorite here. It's a 3-point swing for being at home, so it'd be 1.5.
Oh, right, because even. Sorry, my bad.
No, it's all good.
Wasn't a math major.
So, yeah, look, I do like Florida to go win this game, but I think it's a dogfight. So, we'll see. 23 Missouri at Vandy. Missouri's a 13.5-point favorite. Missouri's been playing good ball. They're still undefeated to this point. Vandy is not a great team. They're not even really a good team. So, I like Missouri to go win this game pretty handily. I'm going to take them by 17. And then 25, Fresno State versus Nevada. Fresno State's a 24.5-point favorite. This is their first time being ranked this year, so it's our first time talking about them. I do like Fresno State to go win this game. I'm not going to give them the 24.5, but I will give them 3 possessions. So somewhere between that 17 and 24 points. Thoughts there? You like that?
I mean, to be honest, I can't really speak on either of these teams, so I don't really know. No offense to Fresno State and Nevada, but, I mean, this is the first that we're talking about you guys this year. Haven't really done much research on them, but, yeah, I'll agree with Vegas. They typically know what they're doing.
Well, Nevada's bad. We'll put it that way. Nevada's really bad. Fresno State put up 53 last week. They beat Arizona State 29-0. They struggled in week 2. Well, honestly, 1 and 2. In week 1, they beat Purdue 39-35, which looked like a really bad loss for Purdue. And then week 2, They beat Eastern Washington 34-31 in overtime, made that loss for Purdue look even worse than it really is. But then, like I said, 29-0 over Arizona State, and then 53-10 over Kent State. I don't think Fresno State's an amazing football team, but I also know that their schedule is pretty favorable. They don't play a lot of – I think Purdue was probably the toughest game on their schedule, and they went and won it. So I don't think Nevada really has a shot here, straight up. All right, that's all the games this week. Lots of games to keep an eye on. Again, I think that Florida at Kentucky game is really interesting. Florida's obviously on upset alert. They're underdogs here. LSU on upset alert. Notre Dame on upset alert. And we'll put Utah on upset alert as well. So got 4 teams there. Interested to see how all those play out. I think those are going to be 4 really, really good games. I think if I had to pick a winner out of those 4 games, the team that I felt most confident would win, I like Notre Dame over Duke the best.
Agreed.
Now, luckily you don't have to pick one because we do locks of the week and we give you 3 picks that are going to hit. They're just going to hit, right? Washington minus 7.5 over Arizona. I mean, that's a steal. I said I would have liked Washington minus 24 over Arizona. So we're just taking a minus 7.5. That's an alternate spread. That the odds on that, if you're going to take it as a straight bet, are minus 375. So not super favorable odds, but that's what we're going for because we're parlaying them up to even money. Missouri minus 5.5 over Vandy. That's minus 340. So again, Vandy's bad at football, and I would take Missouri at probably 17 or more. We're just taking them at 5.5. And then again, Oklahoma minus 9.5. That's minus 390 odds. So you're looking at total odds of plus 106 here. That's even money. You bet $10, you make $10.60. What we've been doing, if you're new here, what we've been doing is we put $10 down on week 1, and every week that we hit, we just roll it over. So we're up to what? We're up to 10, 20, 40, 80. We're betting $80 this week. We're at $80 this week. So if we win, we'll be somewhere around the 165, 170 range, somewhere in there. However those 60 cents translate. But yeah, so that's what we got for the week. And that's all we got for you. Again, if you're going to any games this week, or if there's games down the road that you need tickets to, go to SeatGeek. Type in our code. It's in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. It's at 10-second runoff, just 10 SECOND RUNOFF. 10-second runoff. They'll give you $20 off your first purchase. If you've never bought tickets on SeatGeek before, give it a shot. Use our code. You'll find your tickets $20 cheaper than normal. Thank y'all so much for being here. Please like, comment, subscribe. Send it to everybody you know. We're trying to grow this thing. Thank y'all.